You have something else you wanted to say, Lene?
Nope, I just wanted to start the recording.
Okay. 7. And so it's 7 p.m. and it's Monday, January 25. And I would like to call the Township Planning Commission meeting, the Saugatuck Township Planning Commission meeting to order. At this,
Becky, one quick reminder, if everybody could just mention where they're calling from, the county, the city.
okay, so at this point, I would like our interim township manager, Joe Fry, to review the Zoom ground rules and instructions for our meeting. And after which I will call the roll and then look for a motion to approve tonight's meeting by Zoom. And then I will ask Joe to briefly introduce himself to everyone because not everyone knows him. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so in
Zoom.
order to make them, what was that?
Zoom instructions.
The Zoom instructions for the Saugatuck Township board meetings and planning commission is to make sure that, and please bear with me as I go through this for the first time with you all, is we are doing this for roll call and make sure everybody states where you are from and where you're at right now for compliance with the OMA. There is a public comment section for the public. At that time, you will be recognized. You can put your hand up on the chat list or put a message or start talking and give your name and address so that we know where you're from, and have a 5-minute time limit for individual speaking for public comment. If oh, is it 3?
3.
Oh, it says 5 on the sheet on the agenda. Oh, I'll get that corrected next time. 3 minutes. Thank you for that correction. Please allow for good conversations. You'll get one warning if the public interrupts the meeting. And then after that, we will ask you to leave. And I think those are all the comments, the rules. So,
Thank you,
yes.
Joe.
Yep.
At this time, I'd like to call the roll and please remember to state your name and where your location is at this moment. Okay, DeFranco,
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County, Michigan.
thank you. Eiley,
Here, Allegan County, Saugatuck Township.
Rowe,
Present, Sedona, Arizona.
Shipley,
I'm present, Saugatuck Township, Sandra Lane.
Mr. Welk,
Fort Myers, Florida.
you're here. Helmrich,
Yes.
I am here in Saugatuck Township, Allegan County, Michigan.
and Israel's. I'm here in Saugatuck Township, Allegan County, Michigan. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting by Zoom.
I'll support that motion or make that motion to support tonight's meeting.
I'll support that.
Moved by Mr. Welk, supported by Mr. Helmrich. I will call the roll, please. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, Zoom it is. DeFranco,
Yes.
Eiley,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Shipley,
Yes,
Welk,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Israel. Yes. Okay, moving on. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda for tonight?
Isn't that what we just voted on?
No, we didn't vote on the agenda. We voted on having the meeting by Zoom.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm very confusing, right, John?
I would move that we accept the agenda as written.
Second
I'll
that.
second that.
Moved by Rowe, supported by Mr. Welk, to accept the agenda as written. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. DeFranco,
Yes.
Hiley,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Shipley,
Yes.
Welk,
Yes.
Helmrich. I'm sorry. You got me scared, John.
Yeah, aye.
Rick. Israel's, yes. Okay, number 4, approval of the minutes. We normally go through our minutes page by page. We had quite a few again, Daniel.
All right, next time it'll be shorter, I promise.
That's
Growing
good.
pains.
Good job.
I think you do a good job. So, are there any additions or corrections to page 1 of the minutes from 12/14/2020? Anyone on page 1? I
Mr.
would-
Swan, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Swan's name, am I on the correct page?
Page 1?
Or is that? I'm sorry, no, maybe I'm on the wrong page. I had
Okay.
it up at 1. No,
On page 1, under item 2, could you also, where you say also present is, and you recognized Wells and Curcio, could you also recognize Jay Brody as the hydrogeologist from Kalamazoo Lake Saugatuck Water Authority?
You got it.
Add that? Okay, thank you. Okay, page 2. Page 3. Denise, is that where you want to correct spelling for Mr.?
yeah, I'm sorry, it is, yeah, it is page 3.
Okay, and what is the correct spelling?
Swan, S-W-A-N.
Got it.
That's what it says.
It's actually in 2 places, in that body.
Yeah, where is it?
So
Well,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I've got it at line 6.
oh, I see, Daniel, a couple
Line
times it
11.
comes up as,
Got it.
Line 11,
And
okay,
line 11?
yes,
okay.
Okay.
Mr. Swan expressed.
And Mr. Swan focus.
So just 2 of them, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
and there, actually, there's a 3rd time that it was done, but that's not on to the next page, so.
Any
Yeah,
other?
hopefully spell check doesn't catch those.
No,
The swam is a word.
yeah, for sure.
Page 4,
Yeah, that's it. In section 2, also on the 3rd line, Mr. Swan.
Okay.
any other comments on on page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Page 8? Page 9?
Is she okay?
Page 10? Page 11? And page 12? Page 13? Page 14? And motions on page 15. Okay. Thank you, Danielle. That was a very nice job. And it
Yeah,
was
thank
really,
you, Daniel. That's excellent.
You're all very welcome.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second. As amended.
Correctly, as amended.
Moved by Mr. Walk and seconded by
Rowe.
Rowe to approve the minutes as amended. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Then I will call the roll. DeFranco,
Yes.
Eiley,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Shipley,
Yes.
Welk,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Israel's, yes. Thank you. Moving on to item 5 on our agenda is public comment. At this time, the Planning Commission requests that speakers respect the 3-minute time limit for individual comments and a 5-minute time limit if someone is speaking on behalf of a group. Again, a reminder that this is not a question and answer session, so it is not an opportunity for the board to answer questions of people in the audience, but it is an opportunity for anyone to attend our meetings and share their thoughts with the Planning Commission. And I would like to say at this time, we always appreciate the public participating in our meetings and voicing their thoughts with us. Is there anyone who would like to start? If so, like, do this. Raise your hand.
Sure, I'll start.
Becky, I will start a timer.
Okay. And would you please state your name and your address?
Sure. This is David Swan from 345 Griffith in Saugatuck, speaking on behalf of the Coastal Alliance as well as the neighbor group in Dugout Road recently concerned with the Van Horn Pond and sand dune mining operation. But I should be able to keep my comments to 3 minutes rather than the 5 I'm allotted. Thank you for the inclusion of section D again regarding excavation in the wellhead protection area. As I mentioned during the last Planning Commission meeting, I have concerns, as does the hydrogeologist with whom the Coastal Alliance works, Anthony Kendall, who's a professor at Michigan State University. We have real concerns with dewatering. When you look at the proposed marina at the mouth of the Kalamazoo River, there will be a removal in excavation, proposed excavation of about 240,000 tons of sand, accompanied with dewatering. The hydrogeological model that Professor Kendall, Dr. Kendall, has created shows that tens of millions of gallons of water will flow through that proposed boat basin. When I spoke with him this evening and asked if dewatering in a wellhead protection area would impact a wellhead at a depth of about 200 or 300 feet, he said, oh, absolutely. It could actually change the boundaries of the wellhead protection area itself. So I strongly encourage the township to get the opinions and the science, not just the opinions, of a few hydrogeologists as to what dewatering in a wellhead protection area would do to the well itself. I would be happy to ask Dr. Kendall to take time to write up a few paragraphs. He's very costly. But I can ask if he would be willing to do that for the township. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time?
I don't see any others, Madam Chair. I don't have any hands raised.
Thank you. So
I
at this
do-
time,
I-
I will close the public comments.
We should just note that we did receive some written correspondence.
Okay. And written correspondence, should I note what that is?
Sure, and I can help. We received one letter of written correspondence from Mr. Zimmerman and Chad Van Horn this evening regarding the proposed ordinance recommendation for wellhead protection. We received written correspondence from Carl Gabrisi related to the wellhead protection ordinance as well.
Sorry, can you, when, I have not seen that, when,
The one from Matt Zimmerman, it came today at 5:45. And I forwarded it to your email.
thank you.
Mhm.
I think there's others who have not seen that too, Denise.
Yeah,
And then one other correspondence we did receive was from our own attorney.
yes, thank you.
Thank you. So then at this time, I will close public comments. And I realized that I didn't allow Joe the opportunity to introduce himself to all of you, and I don't know if he's still on.
I'm
But
still here.
are you? Would you like to briefly introduce yourself, say something about yourself and what you're doing, Joe, to the Planning Commission members? I don't think that everyone's aware of
Yep.
what you're up to here.
Yeah, and that's okay. You have an exciting agenda. You got to get going. But hi everybody, I'm Joe Fry. I have taken over for Griffin as the interim township manager. So I'm super excited to be here with you all at the township and help keep projects going and moving forward. I attended Central Michigan University, so I'm a alumni from a proud Chippewa. And I love public service and do have a background in planning and zoning, so it's nice to see how detailed your minutes are and what you guys have going on in the future. So, yep, that's who I am a little bit. So, yeah, hopefully.
Joe, do you have
Thank you.
an email that if people would like to contact you
Oh,
at the township,
yes.
that you have availability?
So I have, my email is manager@saugatucktownship.org. I believe I emailed the planning commission this morning. I sent a letter out to you all. So you can just send me back. I think Denise emailed me this morning. So if you have any questions, just shoot them my way and we'll get them answered and taken care of.
Thank you, Joe. Does anyone have any immediate questions for Joe at this time? Okay, then we will move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is new business. And it is the 2020 Planning Commission annual report that was done by Lene.
Yep, just wanted to include our annual tabulation of activities that have taken place this calendar year with the Planning Commission. This is something that we will include, multiple columns as the years go by to compare them year after year. Last year, we saw 7 special use permits, 10 site plan reviews. Some of those reviews were part of the special approval uses. We had 2 rezoning requests and 3 items that I've tagged as long-range planning. For us with long-range planning, we embarked upon that thorough discussion of the master plan, which resulted in the creation of several committees to dive into specific topics. We also created process charts to guide applicants through various approval processes, and we digitized our submittal forms. We continue in the Planning and Zoning Administration Department to provide follow-up review and inspection of building permit applications to ensure compliance with Planning Commission conditions of approval and certificate of occupancy. We've responded to several different zoning complaints, and we've issued tickets for civil infractions. And we're working on reaching some agreements with a couple property owners for property cleanup. This next table is just kind of a action and activity matrix by month. So it just gives you a reminder of all the things that we did over the last year, meetings that were canceled, and what the decisions were that the Planning Commission took for those agenda items. So it's just a nice overview. And the thought is that this report would be forwarded to the Township Board for their information. It is required that the township, when a township oversees its own utilities, it's required through the Michigan Planning Act that they prepare an annual report. So this is that report. I don't believe they need to take any action. I think just, having it here on the agenda is sufficient. And if there aren't any changes, then I would be forwarding this on to the Township Board just for their information.
Thank you, Lene. It's a wonderful report, and we really appreciate that you did it and kept us in compliance with what we need to be doing. Being that we don't need a formal.
John has a.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm waving. Hi. First of all, I want to thank you for this report. It's fantastic, and I'm just so happy you've done this, and I look forward to sharing it with my colleagues on the board. I want to two things. I want to applaud you for the major steps forward you've been able to accomplish relative to code enforcement. We all know they're a huge burden on time and staff availability, and the fact that we've done as much as we have in the last year is a real a coup for you, and I hope we can do more in the next year as well. Thank you for that. And then I have one question on the month of November.
Okay.
Our meeting was canceled, but you recommended denial. Did you really want us to meet in November?
I'll fix that. I was cutting and pasting too quickly, so.
That's all right. You asked for changes. Otherwise,
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Any other comments from any other board members? Thank you, Lene. It really was a nice job, and we do appreciate that you did this. Being that we don't have to have a formal vote to accept this report, I do want to just ask if we're all in agreement on moving this report forward to the board. And I can ask for that by just an informal, is everyone in agreement in terms of moving this report forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then thank you, Lene, and we'll move it forward with one correction there. Okay, moving on to number 7 on our agenda, which is old business. 7A, and we are discussing zoning ordinance text and map amendment. This reads, consideration of an ordinance to add a new zoning section 40-595 to chapter 40 of the Code of Ordinances, Township of Saugatuck, Michigan, and to amend 40-586 to establish and provide regulations for a groundwater overlay protection zone, and consideration of an ordinance to amend the zoning map to rezone various properties in the township to be a part of the newly created groundwater protection overlay zone. Okay, so I guess, Lene, do you want to start this conversation?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I just wanted to thank the board and everybody who's weighed in on this. We have shared all of the correspondence that we've received. We've shared it with with Mr. Jim Brody from the Kalamazoo Lake Water and Sewer Authority. We've shared it with our township attorney, as well as the Planning Commission and township staff. So we have spent extensive time reviewing all the considerations and comments and discussion that we've had up until today. As you all recall, we met in October for a public hearing. We continued this item in December, and here we are today. So we've also done some precedent research looking at other communities in Michigan, but also nationally that have similar ordinances. So what is before you today is a revision from the previous version. That revision includes certain uses that are regulated that fall under this overlay district. And so this overlay is a geographic area. There's actually two main areas. We haven't changed that overlay. But within that overlay, we require some heightened site plan review. We have some requirements for what is included on a site plan when there's development in this area. We also have regulations related to certain uses which would be prohibited. And I know that's come under a lot of scrutiny and discussion. The main one that I want to call your attention to is that item number 4 in section D. It's the item that has caused a lot of conversation during the past couple of meetings that we've held. And I know there was some confusion about the language, and I think it's important to note for the record that when we look at item number 4, the uses that are prohibited are excavation, extraction, or mining of sand, gravel, bedrock, or any other type of earth material for commercial purposes or for purposes of water body creation or expansion. If any such activities would, number 1, involve digging below the water table, and number 2, be located within 1,000 feet of a municipal well, as measured from the center line of the well to the nearest portion of the proposed excavation area. So I know we received some questions about, well, what if we're excavating a footing for a commercial building? This language, the intent of this is to prohibit the excavation related to mining sand, mining gravel, mining bedrock. It's not prohibiting excavation for a commercial building or a commercial use. And it would only be triggered too if that excavation or extraction is below the water table, and only if it's within 1,000 feet of the well, the municipal well. We did the measurements, and you know, the 1,000 feet includes some properties that are owned by, I see Scott on the call, that are owned by North Shore. It's approximately, so some of the adjacent properties to the well are owned by North Shore. The North Shore PUD is 3,000 feet away from this. So it would not include the area that's within the North Shore PUD. That's a question that we were asked. When we talk about water body, we're talking about ponds or lakes, something that would require a permit from the township or a permit from Eagle. It's not a puddle. It's not a pool. It's not a hot tub or a koi pond. It's it's a water body. So that is the intent of this. We also know that these uses are also regulated as special land uses. Mining is a special land use. And this overlay puts in additional standards for mining within the boundaries of the overlay. So we still have mining regulated in our special land use, and this would just be layered on top of that. So that is kind of the main change that I wanted to alert you to. That 1,000 feet is a best practice from an example that Mr. Brody was researching in another community. And he feels confident that that is a justifiable distance for this standard. So that is kind of the main difference I wanted to alert you to today.
Thank you, Lene. I'd like to open this up for further discussion. Is there anyone who would like to start or has anything to add or any questions, please?
Well, I guess I have a couple of comments. One, I personally feel like this language is kind of being forced into this ordinance, and I also point out the fact that the attorney, our township attorney, had to give us a memo explaining what the language meant just prior to us coming to this meeting, which to me says the language is a little loose. It's difficult to follow. It's open for interpretation. And I just find it concerning. And I'm worried that it's going to, in fact, we just had a conversation at our last meeting about if we're passing ordinances or if we're recommending, these for approval, that we need to consider enforcement because we don't want to overburden our staff. We don't want to create extra work for them because they're already overworked. So I feel like when I read this, even the first sentence, it talks about, excavation, but it says of mining of sand, gravel, bedrock, or any other type of earth material, which that just means for the most part, unless, we're digging up, cars or something, but it pretty much means everything. So that means any kind of excavation or extraction. And I know the attorney addressed for commercial purposes, but I reflected back to this. And when we were talking about the Van Horn property, and a lot of the residents were complaining or were concerned about the material being hauled off site, and that it was that they didn't have their permit in place. Well, the argument at that time was, from one side anyways, was that, well, if we're giving the sand away, then it's really not a commercial operation. However, you look at the definition from Eagle, and they basically they spelled it out in their on their website that any material that is sold, donated, or traded or used for a purpose that has some value. Well, if you're going to move the material in any way, it has a value to the person that's moving the material, because obviously they wanted it out of their way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have moved it. And then I look at the sentence for purposes of water body creation. And I reflect back to a meeting that we just had this weekend with the housing committee. And we were talking about ways to come up with more affordable homes to try to open up our community to younger families, more affordable housing anyways. And part of that idea was we were going to look at the possibility of higher density and smaller square footages, which would then create developments that potentially need retention ponds, would very likely need retention ponds. I look at that's the creation of a water body. And I don't feel like that's what we're trying to accomplish here. But I could see a disgruntled neighbor, somebody that's upset, that doesn't want this project near their home. And they're gonna be able to use this language in their favor. And I also, I look at if any of those, and I know it's within 1,000 feet, but it still limits, I wish I would have seen a map that showed the 1,000 feet around the wellheads, but who knows where future development's really going to go in the township. That's not really for us to decide per se. But and we talk about all these projects that are ongoing, but it's really not the planning commission's job to to try to come up with ways to, affect projects that are already ongoing. They're approved, that's past us. So our job is to look at ways to, create ordinances or recommend rules that protect future uses of the township. And I look at this and I think, okay, well, our hydrogeologists that we hired that talked about the fact that excavation has a minimal impact, a minimal potential impact on these wellheads. And I asked myself, I'm like, what are we talking about here? Why is this coming into it? And I agree that, I will say that, I agree that I think it's important that we pay attention to future development and building and, those things that are going on in the township. But I feel like there's a better way to do it. And I'd love to bring this up in our next meeting and start discussing our land use requirements, our land use standards, and address it through our land use standards instead of putting it into a wellhead protection ordinance that I don't feel like it has a great deal to do with wellhead protection. I mean, we're talking about these things, and as I was reviewing the minutes, I mean, Denise said something that last meeting that really struck me, and I agree with her. She said that she wanted to choose the proper language for the proper reasons, and that's what I'm talking about here is putting the language in this ordinance that pertains to this wellhead protection ordinance, and then let's address these other concerns, which we all know there's people in the community. I think maybe even some of us, we have concerns about, what's going to happen. What's that next development going to look like? We don't necessarily want another, 10-acre pond, man-made pond. We don't feel like that's right for our community. Well, that's great. Let's discuss that through our land use standards. And on the other hand, I mean, anything over 5 acres in these larger excavations, which I think is what we're really trying to get at here, are the large excavations. And those examples I made before, I know that's not our intention, but these larger excavations are really already controlled by the state, to begin with. So that's my 2 cents. As I read it, I try to I look at it from from the outside and understand it. And I just can't wrap my head around to why it really belongs in here. So that's back to you, Becky. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Eiley. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this proposed addition? The chair recognizes Mr. Rowe.
Thank you. I would like to echo a lot of Dave's concerns. I think this is a very important ordinance. I think we need to get it right. We heard a lot of discussion at the last meeting. The memo that Nick put out, I agree. I think it's, I think he had to do an awful lot of explaining, which to me just means the language isn't clear. I really wish that Nick was present for this meeting so that we could ask him some of these questions directly. I personally don't feel good about voting on this unless or until we have Nick present, where we can ask him about some of these concerns and perhaps ask him about some of the concerns that were brought up in the letters that were sent. I just don't see a lot of point in setting ourselves up for what may be immediate legal action. So I, for one, would like to, I'd like to see this tabled to the next meeting and have Nick present for that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
I would second the thoughts of both David and Bill to hold off on this for a time frame. There's other things going on here at this meeting that need to be addressed, and that's, I don't think is the major one.
Okay.
Hi, Shipley here. I
The
guess.
chair recognizes Shipley to the floor.
Thank
Are
you.
you finished, Mr. Welk? Were you finished?
Well, for the time being.
Okay, go ahead, Denise.
I guess I'm a little hung up on the language of excavation because that was what was originally brought to me. There was a reason in my mind that language was, whether it was a template from the state, whatever. I got an explanation for it. I'm still not 100% sure I understand it. But at some point, someone wrote that language for some reason. And it came to me written that way. And so to completely delete it, that's where I'm hung up. So I don't disagree with what Dave is saying. I'm just a little bit confused. If it really doesn't matter, why was it there in the first place? So it mattered to somebody at some point in time. And I just want to be absolutely sure that it doesn't matter here. And I'm not sure I'm convinced of that just yet.
I guess I want to clarify because Joe's, oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm able to respond to that.
Go ahead.
Maybe just for everybody's benefit, if we could explain, not just for me who on an email, if everybody could get a bit of an explanation as to why that was there in the first place, maybe that would help.
The reason that language is written with those terms is because, let me go to our zoning, in our zoning ordinance, we have a uses table and we wanted to have the items in section D be written the same way as our zoning ordinance uses table. And so can you see the table that I have? No, you can't see this. So this is the uses table, if you can see it. And I believe that if we go to sand and gravel or mining, maybe it's not in this table. Okay, hold on one second.
So a continuity.
It's a
language.
continuity, exactly. So
Thank you.
if we, let me just go to our one. I just want to find the specific.
So it came from ourselves.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. It's because we're trying to be consistent with what our zoning ordinance says with mining operations.
Which I'm assuming ties into the master plan also somehow.
Well, I think just the idea of continuity and having the same language. So I'm not finding the exact location. Hold on one second.
It's okay, Lene, just so that makes a lot more sense to me now. And maybe it helps make sense to others.
Yeah. Let me see if it's in here.
It's just a struggle, I guess. Maybe it's my newness or something, but I'm reading something and then suddenly it's completely gone. And it's hard to understand. It's just hard to understand why it was there if it wasn't important.
What is not there that was before?
Well, when it was completely deleted. And so adding some of the language back in, I think is acceptable, but I agree that maybe we need some more time on this. That was just a big question to me. And I like that now I understand it was a continuity of language of what was already written by our township.
And if I may, if I remember from the minutes, I thought I read that the reason why it was removed was because staff felt it was overwhelming to try to understand how to, I don't know if the right word is enforce or the right way to maybe to write it, to spell it out. And that's what I read. That's why it was removed, because they were concerned that if this language is in here, then they didn't know what was going to happen. They were worried about it. So they felt it was better to remove the language altogether. That's what I remember reading in the minutes. Is that right, Lene?
Yes, I would agree with you, Dave, on that. And I remember them saying it is best served being in the land use ordinance versus in this ordinance. And so a duplication of that seemed a little confusing, and could be construed to be very confusing. I would like to hear from Mr. Helmrich or Mr. DeFranco too.
No,
do you have
I'm
any?
ready. No, I just wanted to underscore, because I think it's kind of misrepresented, that the 4D language we're looking at is not an addition to anything. It was put back. It was excluded from an original draft ordinance that I believe has been in our possession for well over a year after the two cities adopted their groundwater and wellhead protection and kept coming back to the township to say, when are you guys doing yours? And it's been tabled. It wasn't just tabled last month. It's been tabled over and over again. And we had a very deep dive discussion last month about D4 and voted unanimously to have staff and council look at maybe putting it back in, which is what they've done. And I think they've done an amazing amount of work in the last month. And I commend Council Curcio's memo that was sent addressing all this, where he closes his memo. In his opinion, the proposed language is reasonable and was drafted in good faith. I thought that's what this planning commission directed or asked him to do, and he's done it. And like I said, it was a reinstatement and tweaking, not a brand new addition. And to me, that's very pertinent. And that's how I feel about this.
Thank you, John. Are you finished?
I think so. No, and I like the fact, as pointed out by our zoning administrator, it matches our zoning. There's consistency here. There should be consistency between ordinances and zoning and master plan, as we've all spoken to. Thank you. And again, I mean the board, the township entity itself, the cities are like, what do you got? Why haven't you guys addressed this? I mean, we've been addressing it, I think, very deeply. And as I already said, it's been tabled a number of times, and I feel like it's in a good position per our instructions to Mr. Curcio and to Ms. Wells. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. DeFranco?
Yeah, I guess I'll start it by saying that, if you go through the master plan, protecting water quality is a top priority. So we all at some point do have a responsibility to pass this wellhead protection ordinance, just to get it out there. And then also we've been talking about the memo from our attorney Curcio. And I think that if you look at it independently, yeah, it does look like he's, trying to explain things, and it's kind of weird the things he's addressing, but you have to look at it in context. The Curcio memo is in direct response to the memo from Mr. Gabriel's, and is essentially squashing these outrageous statements that Mr. Gabriel's is making. So it's not that it's not that subsection D4 is so confusing. It's that we are being confused, and we are being, things are being thrown at us to confuse us. And I thought Mr. Curcio did a fantastic job of kind of laying it out and saying, no, it's not going to prevent the construction of a koi pond or a pool. So that's kind of my thought on the Curcio memo, that you have to look at it in context. It's a direct response to somebody else's memo making all sorts of claims. And the way that I'm kind of looking at this is that, it does sound like, excavation, extraction, or mining of sand, gravel, bedrock, or any other type of earth material for commercial purposes, and creation of water body. It sounds like that's prohibited. But in fact, it actually says you can excavate for mining, you can do water body creation or expansion, as long as it doesn't involve digging below the water table and it's not located within 1,000 feet of a municipal well. So it's essentially saying all those things are allowed unless you're doing these two things. And, if we're talking about the well in the North Shore property, that aquifer we've all established is hundreds of feet deep. So even if, let's say, the Van Horn project was within 1,000 feet of the municipal well, I don't think he's hit below the water table yet, so that would be approved. So, I mean, I don't know. And I also, from what Mr. Brody said, he did say that a broad ban on excavation within the delineated delineated wellhead area would be something that, just doesn't make sense. However, if you're putting a lake on top of or in close proximity to a municipal well, he said that that will change water levels and that can alter water chemistry. He does say that if you're digging a mine next to a municipal well, he would be worried. So that's all I kind of have to say.
May I, Becky?
Dave?
I think Daniel brings up a good question, is what is groundwater? Because I will tell you that Van Horn property, that pond, the only reason why it has water in it is because that pond's below the groundwater. So it doesn't have a clay liner. It doesn't have anything to hold water other than its groundwater. So that stands the question. I mean, what are we defining as groundwater? I feel like we're talking about two different things. We talk about potable water, which is the 200 feet down. It doesn't even have to be 200 feet. It can be, I think some of our wells are like 80 feet deep. But then groundwater, I mean, I haven't dug down to find out, but I would suspect it's 5-6 feet deep, and you're hitting groundwater. So it's, that's a good question, is how do you define, what are we defining here as groundwater?
I think, Dave, you're asking a great question. I would just add one correction. We're not talking about groundwater. We're talking about the water table. So I would say, what is the water table? Does the water table count, or does groundwater count as the water table, or does the aquifer count as the water table?
I know what you're saying, and I think we can argue it. I mean, you're right. It's all.
I just wonder if there's a technical distinction.
Yeah, I mean, because you could call the groundwater that's filling the Van Horn property, maybe that's more of an aquitard, not an aquifer, and so there is a geological distinction between the two, but I think it could be easily argued that is groundwater. So and it's just, that's what I mean about the looseness. And I think that these are important things that we need to address as a township. But my concern is you're going to have, I mean, if you can pick apart the language, then, I mean, we're setting ourselves up for battles, and we're going to end up in court. We're going to lose. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost staff time. That's my concern. That's what I'm putting out there. And to the point, and to Bill's point and Ed's, it'd really be nice if we could consult the attorney and just say, hey, is this a valid concern?
Dave,
thank
you
you,
just
Dave.
said you wanted to do this for
The
the right
chair
reason.
recognizes Shipley.
I apologize, sorry, I should, Shipley. Dave, you said to do it for the right reasons, not because we're afraid of litigation. In my opinion, call me new again, but you know, this is my drinking water. This is our wellhead. Doing it because I'm afraid of litigation. Maybe you could help us write the language a bit better, Dave. I mean, I'd be willing to accept if you had something, I'd be more than happy to hear what you think could be changed or how it could be made more understandable. That's just not a good answer for me. I'm afraid of litigation. I'm sorry. With all due respect.
I feel the right answer is to strike the excavation comment altogether.
Fair.
So Dave, I'm just curious, what changed your mind from a month ago?
I didn't change my mind. I voted that staff should go back and they should look at it a little closer and see if there is, you know, if I was thinking maybe they would figure out something that I didn't know or that we learned something new. I don't feel we have.
And
Are there
I
any
would
other
just
comments?
like to-
Go ahead, Mr. Rowe.
Yeah, you know, I guess my understanding was that the attorney was going to be present tonight. You know, my understanding from last month's meeting was that we would have this continued discussion with the attorney present. And I'm just personally not comfortable until we have at least another conversation with our attorney present to address some of these issues.
Thank you.
Um,
Mr. Welk?
Yeah, I would, you know, not only the attorney, but the hydrologist. Come on. We're asking, you know, we can go out and get 50 hydrologists on the other side of the issue who will say whatever they're being paid to say for. And we can get our hydrologist who we've heard from. We have an attorney, and again, the other side who doesn't like this can go out and 50 attorneys and hire them at great fees to come back and say what we want to hear or what we don't want to hear. The issue is we have an attorney, we have a hydrologist, we can keep going down this road forever and ever and spending a lot of money. And quite honestly, as we heard from our last meeting on the 17th or whatever it was, you know, I made a suggestion that we pay our staff better so we don't lose them, which we just lost Griffin. And John followed up, oh, absolutely, absolutely. And now John is one of the big primary people that wants to spend money on litigation. And I just don't understand. Come on, what are we doing here? Let's just make a decision, make a motion, vote on it, and move forward. Because this could go on for years. And Bill and I have been on for years. And we know this kind of stuff just is not worth spending the time or in particular spending the money on. So come on, folks, let's just say, what do we want to do? Somebody make a motion, we'll vote on it, move forward, period.
I recall a few months ago, that's what I had, sorry, Shipley. I recall a few months ago, that's what I had said, and I was more than happy to accept the engineer and the attorney's information at that time. I believe I said, I really don't want this to drag on 6 months. I kind of got the eye roll, but here we are 3 months into it at least, that I'm aware of. And you know, I agreed in the first place. Just so we're clear, I definitely said I accept my attorney and I accept my engineer's opinions. And I was one of the two that was ready to vote on it months ago. So now everything got muddied, and we are several months into it, Ed. So I agree, we'd like to get this over with, but maybe somebody does want to make a motion.
Chairperson.
I'll make
I heard Mr. Eiley speak.
DeFranco.
David,
May I be? May I-
What?
David said that, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'll make a motion, and if I may, but I'd like to do like a two-part motion, because I feel like there's important things we're discussing here on both ends. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion that we strike D4 from the proposed wellhead protection ordinance and approve the remaining proposed ordinance as it's written. And then secondly, I'd like to move that we discuss the township land use standards and discuss how we address large-scale excavations and how we can control them in the township.
I'll second that motion, David.
Well, it sounds like there's a two-part motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Part A is to strike D4 and approve the remaining ordinance as written. And part B, could you please repeat that, Dave?
I would like to, at the next Plan Commission meeting, discuss the township land use standards and discuss how we can address some of these, or how we can address these excavation issues that we've been talking about, that were trying to be addressed by D4 here. And does that make sense?
Yes.
And I'll go along with that as part of my motion.
Okay. So the motion is to strike D4 from the ordinance. I have to get it in front of me, I'm sorry. The groundwater protection ordinance is, and this has been moved by Eiley and seconded by Mr. Welk. And the second part of that motion is that to put on a further meeting agenda discussing the land use ordinance standards and how to make use of the items in D4 that we are striking from this ordinance at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I just ask,
At this point, I'd like to say, is there any discussion?
Yeah.
That's really the next thing. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Rowe.
just a question for clarification. Dave's motion is to strike D4. Is it then also to recommend that the board adopt the amended ordinance with the D4 stricken?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, strike D4 and recommend adoption. Thank you very much. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this at this point?
I would. DeFranco, please.
The chair recognizes Mr. DeFranco.
I mean, I kind of feel frustrated. I feel that we did spend money on an attorney. We did spend money on a hydrologist. We did have the language altered twice. And I just feel like, you know, there's always a reason to reject it. And I don't think there's been, you know, there's always a reason to see that it's complicated. But in this case, I think that there's a clear term here, water table, that deserves a further consideration. At this point where, you know, we're guessing as to whether or not it's got, you know, a general use term or it's a technical term. If it is a technical term, which I think that it probably is, it most likely refers to, I mean, I have a definition here. A water table is an underground boundary between the soil surface and the area where groundwater saturates spaces between sediments and cracks. or it is the upper surface of the zone of saturation. If that's the case, then we're probably talking about the uppermost reaches of the aquifer. And if we're talking about excavation that breaches that uppermost boundary of the aquifer within 1,000 feet of the wellhead, well, that's just perfectly pertinent to protecting groundwater. So I do think that, I mean, if no one is ever going to be satisfied with whatever terminology we put in there, then, you know, so be it. However, I think that if that does have a technical term, water table, we should know about it. And I think that if it is talking about breaching the aquifer within 1,000 feet of the wellhead, that would directly open up the municipal aquifer to pollutants. And we're not just talking about protecting water for Saugatuck Township. We're talking about protecting water for Saugatuck Township, the cities of Saugatuck and Douglas, and the township of Laketown, or Laketown Township. So that's just all I have to say.
Anyone else?
Take a vote.
I think I would like to add something, if I may. I found our last meeting in December to be a challenge, and 2.5 hours I thought was really exhausting, somewhat confusing for many of us, and possibly even when we ended the meeting, I thought, did we just waste our time and resources because we didn't reach a conclusion? But as we wrap things up, I wasn't even sure where we left off. And this all was a result about a line item in a proposed ordinance that took us on this long journey for residential development, commercial use, personal passions, ponds, a proposed marina, aquifers, groundwater, deep well water, all kinds of mining and soil testing. And it even infiltrated into Laketown Township and other areas. So first, I just want to backtrack from that last meeting and thank again the two guests who we asked to participate in that event, and Nick Curcio, our township attorney, and Jim Brody, a hydrogeologist, and for taking our questions and talking about a subject that none of us were well versed in at the time. Since then, I reviewed the video twice prior to getting the letters from the two attorneys, and I came to the conclusion that the meeting was actually very educational and not frustrating. But I do think we may have missed some very important content. And so this proposed ordinance is designed to protect our water sources, and 99% of it we agree upon. And it's to protect us from chemicals, hazardous waste, radiological materials, oil, things that pollute the water system. And it guides testing on property transfers. It guides testing of old wells and secondary effects related to chemical leaks, spills, stormwater, and things like that. And we further reiterate all these things again in 4D in a prohibited use, which is really just a description of all the things previously addressed in this policy. And I think the language, what I would call is, and this is my language, I would call it sticky. And that's my big word for the night. So our experts told us the language wasn't really necessary in D4. But we didn't really listen to them at the time, and being the good protectors of a document that we are, we wanted to refit the language because simply eliminating it wasn't comfortable for us. But Part D can easily be eliminated at this point, as it's already in the ordinance. And excavation and extraction are under the jurisdiction of the state. And the wellhead protection area is defined by the state of Michigan, and it's approved by Eagle, all in accordance and under the advice of hydrology experts. So now we're asking them to spend time and energy trying to describe what we mean in our ordinance. And I wonder, where will they be when the time comes to support those sticky measures? And we were told that eliminating 4D would be a very good action, both by the hydrologist and our attorney. We were told eliminating 4D would be a good action at the local level because permitting would have to occur at the state level anyway. And our township attorney and hydrologist agreed that moving the contents of excavation and extraction to land use ordinances actually seemed more appropriate and would provide an additional layer of oversight that would be more specific to those uses. We were also informed that this ordinance does not inhibit home site excavation in any matter. What we did not think about is how this may affect, and Dave, you brought this up too, is may affect other projects that could come to our township and that again would be better addressed in land use ordinances specific to the types of land in question. And I think our challenge is to accept the role of our leadership and make the decisions that support our township. We lead with information and the advice that we get from field educated persons. And our township staff provides us with those resources. We also hear from community members, and often we only hear from folks who may not agree with a pending action. But good leaders make really tough decisions for really good reasons. And I support the removal of 4D in its entirety, not because of one letter from a community member's attorney, but because it makes the future application of it sticky. And I can't think of a better word, but we know this is sticky. We have a 2-page letter from our own attorney trying to explain it. So I do support adding it to future agenda items and as language to our land use agreements. And the regulatory aspect of it could further support land use agreements, regulations by neighborhoods and community districts, site plan review, and development site overview. So in conclusion, it seems unrealistic to prohibit excavation and extraction. And as we were told, they are both low threats to our groundwater in general, as stated by our experts. It's not reasonable to think that one policy fits all is a solution either. We are different from the city of Douglas, and we are different, or the village of Douglas and the city of Saugatuck, in structure, government, resources, and potential growth. And we're different from the areas to our north, Lake Town, as our wells are really very deep and theirs are shallower. And remember, we learned too that there was no trillium, or is that the word, trillium, detected in our water supply there in 6 and 7, which implies there's been no connection to surface water for 50 years or more in that area at this time. But we were also told we do have aging wells, and we have a potential for a new well in 2022, which is good for us. All these decisions have nothing to do with getting the new well in 2022. But the ordinance and the relationship with Cal Lake is really a good step in protecting our water for future generations. So I do support 99% of this ordinance. And so I guess, you know, I look to you all for a motion.
I thought we made a motion, Becky.
We did. We did.
All right, and it's been seconded, and so I think you need a roll call.
Okay. Any other comments? And I will call the vote. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. DeFranco,
Yes.
Eiley,
Yes.
Shipley,
No.
Welk,
Yes.
Helmrich,
No.
Israel's, yes. Well, did I get everyone? Israel, Helmrich,
Rowe.
Rowe, I'm sorry, Mr. Rowe.
Yes.
All right. Motion passed, 5 yes, 2 no. Okay. Moving on. Are we ready?
We sure are.
Yes, let's move on.
Item B, master plan review and subcommittee updates. I would like to see this on our agenda every month, if that's possible. There may not be any updates. I do have a couple, but is there anyone who would like to speak to any committee that they're on at this point? Mr. Rowe?
Yes, we had a brief meeting this week and have another one planned for Thursday of this week. This is the Housing Committee, just to be clear. And it's Ed Welk, Dave Eiley, and myself. And we now have a community member, Harry Adams, who will be joining us on Thursday's meeting. There were just two of us present at the first meeting, so there's not a lot of point in discussing what went on there. I think we'll have more to report after our meeting with all four this Thursday. But I'm excited about it. I think we're gonna come up with some good things, and looking forward to moving forward with that. And I do absolutely support having that as a regular agenda item where we can give updates for each committee moving forward. That's all.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments about subcommittees at this time?
DeFranco.
Thank you, Daniel. The floor recognizes DeFranco.
First of all, I just would like to thank Chairperson Israels for kind of at the last minute recommending that waste removal and recycling be a committee. I think that it's something that is in the master plan. It's something that's ongoing already in the tri-community. And it kind of just gives that extra legitimacy to the tri-community recycling committee kind of, giving the stamp of approval from the planning commission, from the township board, and just recognizing that it aligns not only with the master plan, but it also aligns with the strategic goals of the township board and the planning commission going into 2021. So I really wanted to thank you for that. In terms of the rural character committee, we have not yet. I'm in the process of recruiting some members. I have 2 people who are interested in joining. I want to get a few more, make sure it's a kind of a diverse group of people, and then I'll be sending out emails arranging our first meeting.
Thank you, Danielle. Is there anyone that would like to report on Blue Star? Dave, I'm sure you haven't.
Well, yeah, I've started compiling a list of names because I'm actually John's the one that brought this up. I think it was our last meeting, but I'm trying to come up with a representative on the committee from the public to represent or to speak about the economic development of the Blue Star corridor. And so I've been kind of compiling a list of names of some business owners that I want to approach and see if they have any interest in joining the committee. And I've already have somebody from the Parks Department or like the Parks that's willing to be on the committee, which is fantastic. And so I'm making a list of different categories that I want to fill, and then I'm really trying to find a way to reach out not only within the Planning Commission and the board for that matter, but also from the public, because obviously it affects all of us, and everybody uses Blue Star Highway. So I hope by next meeting I will have a committee assembled.
Okay, that sounds great. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to any of these committees? I will also speak to it. So I know I received an email, I think from Denise, that just asked that we include basically, I don't know if you want to speak to that, Denise.
Sure, I just had noticed when you initially did a grid of, we're considering different subcommittees, there was a number of, and I don't have it in front of me at the moment, a number of people that were interested in special environments. Can't remember, the words aren't coming to me at the moment. And because so many people were interested in that specific category, it seemed that deleting it didn't make sense. So, but I also agreed with you that we can only focus on so many things. But because everybody seemed, not everyone, a lot of people seemed to be interested in that specific thing, maybe we could incorporate that into each of our subcommittees versus creating a whole new committee.
Okay. And I can speak to that too. When I went through these and when people gave me pretty much the things that they were interested in, I spent time having conversations with people on the phone to gather more information. And so I had to narrow things down and actually come up with something that's very doable, and that we could have some action plans and that we could feel like we did accomplish something. There is no way to go through the entire master plan and accomplish all the things that are in there. And it's also a 5-year plan. The other piece to that is that we're all volunteers, and that's been noted to me time and again. And I think that's very, very true. And we appreciate anything anyone can do in terms of volunteering. And we all have other lives to live too. So I think that when I finally settled on housing and rural character, I decided the rural character was going to take care of some of those things that you were addressing, Denise. And
Okay.
the Blue Star Corridor has also, just let me finish and you can step in, but the Blue Star Corridor has also been on our docket for 3 years now. And we had brought it up, but sort of lost the impetus and direction for it when a new board came in. And so at the time 3 years ago when we were discussing it, we weren't talking about these special committees. And so I would just like to say that, you know, that's why I came up with the 3 areas. And I wanted to include the work that I knew Daniel was already doing on waste removal, because that's really very important too. So we've got 4 top-notch things going here. And in just trying to review it and put closure to it, I did commit to quarterly meetings and getting something started with planning commissions in the 2 other communities. So I have not done anything towards that to date. What I have done though is scheduled time at the Parks Commission meeting. I believe it's February 3rd, where I'm also going to talk to them about these 4 committees that we have in place, and ask them if anyone, if there's interest in anyone from that group, I'm going to suggest the names of the chair people that they contact them. And so you might be getting some contacts from the parks too, but I do think it's important that we start talking about what we're doing. And so I'm happy to talk to any other group, but I thought I would start with parks, and I set this up with Jim. And I had talked with Lori Goshorn too, so she may be the one who's already called you, Dave, I'm not sure, but she was all over this right away, and very excited about it. So I think it's very good. And then I really do want us to read this book, Strong Towns. So I have a book and Lene has a book, and I would just wonder, John, could we buy a couple more and share it? Or, oh, Bill has a book. All right, so here's the deal. In our next,
in Arizona.
I know, but he's got the book. So they have the book in Arizona. I bought the book from Amazon, and I noticed there's a lot on Amazon. So
I bought it on it.
I'm just going to suggest that my reading club, which I know people really hate belonging to book clubs, either love it or hate it. We're going to discuss the first 3 chapters next month. And I'm just going to have 2 questions out there to ask you, and I'll tell you in advance, nobody's going to be put on the spot, but there'll be general questions like what excited you most about, they'll be very positive. So what excited you most about the first 3 chapters or something like that. And I would like to hear from all of you. So that's where I'm going with the book, okay?
Becky, it's John. I think we can all commit to acquiring and reading the book,
Okay. I think so too.
because I haven't heard from everyone on the materials we did purchase on planning commission, ZBA, et cetera. So we still have those in the office. A couple people have responded, but I'm fine being a lending library, but I think we can handle the book individually.
We can too.
I wanted to mention, I know we don't need another committee, but I do want to remind all of us, as we discussed at the joint meeting last week, it is time to start discussing and forming the Tri-Community Master Plan Review Committee. And I alerted the 2 cities and their zoning people that the township did our annual meeting, but next step is, it is 2021, as we discussed. It's been 5 years since the current plan was adopted by all 3 communities. And this Tri-Community Committee should be forming soon and be ready to do a deeper dive than we've been able to do. But I commend us because we've started, and maybe they have too, but I mean, we have to integrate it now. And that is another committee that some of us should consider being a part of as we move forward.
Thank you, John.
And if anyone would like to be part of that, John, should they talk to you, or do you think that staff will initiate work on that and say, this is how we would like to have it? We would like to have our zoning administrator or zoning chair.
At this juncture, I'm happy to coordinate that. I mean, some of our staff is brand new and maybe temporary, we don't know. So I'd say communicate with me at this point. Let's see what feedback I get from the 2 cities. And then at some point, there'll be someone in charge of really doing all the organization and setting up the meetings. That's my feeling.
And I think too, John, it might be good to get board input on that and see how they would like that process to go. In the past, when I first started doing things with the township, I asked how the master plan was done. And I think that the managers basically, I was told the managers basically did the master plan. And I appreciate that you're suggesting more people are involved in that. So I think that's a good idea. I'm just not sure of the correct segue to get people involved.
No, agreed. And this time's different. Saugatuck doesn't have a manager right now until the 1st of February. So there's some transition going on in the community.
And Douglas has a new assistant manager, I understand.
Oh, okay. Well, let's put them in charge.
I think she's great. She is great. Okay. So if you're all agreeable to that, I would like to call these, instead of subcommittees, but call them special committees. It's just, a wordplay, but I like that word, special committee, because you're all very special. And I'm so grateful that you're doing this, because this is new and we just have to be respectful of what you're doing. And I know you have busy lives, but they say busy people get more done. So.
Right.
Thank you. Any other comments on the master plan review? Lene, anything? Maybe.
None from me, none from me.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then from item 7B to number 8, public comment, please. The public comment time is now open. Please state your name. Same rules apply. Name and address, please. And where you're talking from right now, because you are on a Zoom call.
Are you addressing me since I'm waving?
Sure.
This is David Swan. I am speaking to you from Newportville, which is on the outskirts of Ann Arbor along the Huron River, just east of Saugatuck Township by about 120 miles. I just want to make 3 quick points. This was, as a policy wonk, this was a really fabulous meeting, and I think you all should be commended for being open and honest. The chair tonight, I thought your ending comments and your analysis was fantastic. I really appreciate everybody really digging into this and asking good questions like, what's a water table and what's groundwater? And Eiley asking, essentially, what does impact the wellhead? So I encourage all of you to really follow the science on this. Dewatering to a magnitude of tens of millions of gallons will impact the wellhead. That's just basic science and math. And then finally, strong towns are often made stronger by local independent booksellers. Please, if you're gonna read small towns, buy the book from your local independent bookseller. I think there are 3 in the Saugatuck Douglas area. Judy's store, of course, and then the new store over by the former Wilkins shop. So strong towns are often made stronger by strong independent booksellers.
That's a
it.
very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment this evening? Hearing none, I will close the public comments section of tonight's agenda and move on to the board discussion. Lene, I'll let you speak first to any board discussion. I was thinking the annual report would be here, but I see, but anyway, I just hadn't looked at the agenda well enough in the first place. So do you have anything to add tonight?
No, I don't have anything to add under board discussion, other than, again, thanking everyone for participating in the joint meeting that we had last week. I'm sure John will speak to that. And then I can also just give you a quick heads up for February 22nd. I believe we will have a meeting. We have what I hope is going to be a more complete site plan for the miniature golf course over across from the Township Hall. They did submit their site plan materials. We had some comments, so they're going to be revising those. We spoke to them today. And then I believe that we're going to have a special land use request for a home-based business that does have employees and they are using an accessory building, which is not allowed unless through approval by the Planning Commission as a special land use. So those are 2 items that we would be having on our agenda for February 22nd.
Okay. So will we be adding to that agenda?
Special committees.
No, well, of course, we'll add the special committees update. But are we going to discuss the excavation extraction clause in this policy?
We could be discussing land use.
Okay, all right, because
If
that's
you'd
what we
like.
asked to do, yes. All right, thank you. Okay, and if you have any thoughts about it to give me, all right, thank you.
Okay.
John, would you like to address any board updates, please?
I'd be happy to, thank you. So the Saugatuck Township Board last met also via Zoom on Wednesday, January 13th. A couple weeks ago. There have been lots of meetings this month. We opened with a presentation from the township auditor who did an overview of the recently completed audit for fiscal year 2020, which continues to show Saugatuck Township in a much stronger than average fiscal position, well ahead of the average for municipalities across the state, which is always good to know and share. Manager Graham then presented an annual report on the progress of the 2020 board goals. That was shared with you last week at the joint meeting. We also made appointments to the Board of Review and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Newcomers include Denise Webster, and Mark Santamore to the Board of Review. And Patrick Stewart has gone up to the ZBA from alternate, with Harry Adams replacing him as that alternate. The consultant, Larry Nielsen, who's working with the board on the strategic action plan for 2021, he shared a draft that he put together from the meetings and the one-on-one email exchanges and survey questions that had gone on throughout early January. The board did vote to hold a special meeting in February to actually further discuss and finalize a 2021 board goals and strategy plan. The thinking was that right now it was a little too soon to move on that at the board meeting last week, with transitional staff changes within the township and other issues we're all working on collectively. We had set that date for Saturday morning, February 20th. That had to get changed today. The good news is one of my colleagues on the board got scheduled for their COVID vaccine that morning. So that's pretty important. So we'll be setting a new date. We'll share it with everyone, because everyone is invited, the public, members of the Planning Commission, to attend this meeting via Zoom once we have the brand new date in February. Let's see, we also voted to hold the election for the cemetery maintenance millage in August. That is expiring, so that has to be addressed by the public. Board voted to accept an ordinance enforcement settlement with a property owner on Old Allegan Road. And we also adopted a resolution to fully join the Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority, which will now go back to the two cities for a final vote. In the past, you might know, we had a representation, a non-voting representative, so we're hoping to become a full-fledged two voting member, equal partner with our two cities in Cal Lake Harbor Authority. Manager Graham's letter of resignation was accepted. And let's see, today's just Monday. Friday that just happened was his last day with us. If you hadn't heard, he has accepted a position as assistant city manager in South Haven. That's his hometown. That's where he's from. It's where he got family involved with local government. His fiance is moving over here, so he's on to the next chapter of his life. But we were very lucky to have been introduced already to Joe Fry, who you met earlier this evening, and we approved an interim 60-day agreement for him to act as township manager at this point, and we are thrilled to welcome him. We voted to continue as a participant in the ad hoc intergovernmental recycling committee with the two cities. That will continue for another year, and we are retaining our three current representatives, one of whom you know is Daniel DeFranco. So that is ongoing between the three communities. At the end of the meeting, we did have some, not much, but we had a couple public commenters. One was the various appointees and applicants to the Board of Review and ZBA spoke. And then we had a person comment who's been there before on a potential off-road vehicle ordinance for the township. And then someone else also spoke about the continued interest in creating a historic district at the Kalamazoo River mouth. Any questions on our January meeting?
I have two comments, John.
Yes.
One is a question. Are we actively looking for a township manager then?
As of this moment, no.
Okay,
We're training and getting used to our interim manager.
okay,
I would expect we'll follow our hiring policy and probably post a position at some point, but right now that's not been the focus.
okay. And my only other comment was that I did participate in that meeting, and the auditor who spoke about the audit was very, very complimentary to the processes and the data and all the materials. And he was very complimentary to you, John. So I just want to say thank you. We all appreciate that. And you didn't kind of bring that up, but I will.
Well, thank you. That's not for me to bring up, but
I know.
I appreciate you saying that. It's gone very smoothly now the last 2 years. And again, I mean, the key thing is, I'll just throw this out for those that are policy nerds, which I know many of us are. The average municipality in the state of Michigan has 60% of their annual necessary expenditure, budget expenses in the bank at any given time. Many have far less than 60%. We now, for 2 years in a row, have 120%. And that's also driving, getting off here, but we are making some decisions probably this week to do further investments for the township. Because when we all took over, we had one investment product, a CD at the bank for $760,000. We've already cashed that out, taken some of the reserve cash, and we have over $1 million invested now and plan to add to that, as I said, in the next couple of weeks. So it's exciting working on that fiscal end of things as well. Thank you, Becky.
Yeah, and I think we all know that as a 501c3, investments are highly regulated. And so I appreciate that you and Abby have worked very hard together to explore the options for that and invest our money wisely. So thank you. Any other board discussion?
Yes.
Yes, what is that, Ed?
Well, at the last meeting, which was what, a week ago or a week and a half ago, I brought up the issue that we need to start paying our staff a reasonable salary. Now, if we're sitting with 120%, I'm not saying to just give 60% to the staff, but we've got to start paying our employees a reasonable salary so that they will stay working for us. And it seems that the problem we have is not at the low end of the scale, but at the high end of the scale. And I think John agreed with me, and it's, time to start for the board to start looking at the township to say, hey, we want this person, and so we're going to have to compensate them. That's my pitch.
Ed, you should come to some of our budget planning meetings this year. There'll be
Well,
stuff.
I'll be happy to do that. I mean, I know how to.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I won't get into too much detail, but there is a delineation between what can be spent on an ongoing year-to-year basis versus, we could take a chunk of money tomorrow and redesign the whole township hall without the voters approving it. If
I
it's
know that,
something like
John.
salary, it's more complicated, but I agree with you, and I think that should be a priority.
And I think that we can go ahead and figure out ways to say, oh, well, this cost is only 20% for this, 40% for this, and another 40% for this. And maybe we can start taking things that are supposed to go to this part of a program and take out our administrative costs, even though the budget allows us to take administrative costs, we can take additional ones. That's all I'm saying. And there's ways to figure out how to make things work better for the township. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Ed. I think that a lot of us know that you're quite the economist. So you do. And I think that you meeting with John is a really good idea. So when you get back, you already have some work to do. I have to tell you as a side, when at the end of our meeting, I didn't quite hear what you were saying when we were logged off. And I thought you said, I need some money. And I had to go back and listen to the YouTube video again, just to hear what you said about, I'd like to help you with the money. And so anyway, I thought, what was Ed saying? But anyway, that was kind of cute. So everyone, I'd like to say thank you. Is there anyone else that has any comments this evening before we adjourn? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll
Second.
that.
Any further discussion? Then I will call the roll. Franco,
Yes.
Eiley,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Shipley,
Yes.
Welk,
Yes.
Helmrich.
Yes,
Israel's yes. Thank you all for a very productive meeting.
Good night,
thank
everyone.
you.
Good night, all.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.